Okay. We have got to say hello to puppies and kittens. Is that the?
Yeah, puppers. Hello, puppies.
I can steal your start line. Right then, I'm here today, joined by Rina Brown. She's a budding author, and we're going to talk about her book and how she come to become a writer, and get into what she's into. Basically, that's. So let's start off. Do you want to? If you've got a little introduction to yourself, who are you?
All right. So hello everybody for who doesn't know me. I think everybody joining us will know me, but just in case, my name is Rina Brown. I'm 19, and I have published one book by myself, and now I have a second book that I was a part of that is now published. I always kind of knew. Yeah, that's the one. I have stories included in there, but it was a multiple author group project. So I always kind of knew I wanted to write, if that makes sense. I was always thrilled with like fantasy, and I was always coming up with these crazy elaborate games that my little brother absolutely adored. And then as I kind of started getting older, I realized, wait a minute, you can write this stuff down. Like, wait.
All right, let's go back a bit before you give all my questions away. Let's go back and let's do more questions. So that's the basic synopsis. Right, so let's start off with your early reading. What do you remember reading as a kid? What got you into reading? Were you always a voracious reader? Did your mum read to you? That kind of thing?
Mom did read to me when I was young, yes, and and just it was kind of like the picture books and stories and stuff like that. And then as I started getting older, she encouraged me to start reading. I think the book that and I may be wrong, but I think the book that had me actually fall in love with reading books was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I read that probably when I was like 8 or 9, and I just loved it. Read the second one, and then I recently, for everyone who knows my my slowly dying channel, I tried to start rereading them again and give book reviews, but I still can't get past the fourth one. But yeah, Percy Jackson was probably the book that inspired it all. And then when I got into late elementary school, that our teachers had us like in book groups, like book buddies, and we had to pick books to read. And I remember my partner was a huge fan of the Harry Potter series, so I ended up reading a lot of the Harry Potter books, and I was like, yes, fantasy.
Right. So that's kind of both those are kind of fantasy, aren't they? Is a Percy Jackson like mythological based?
Yes.
And
yeah.
There's all magic and fantasy. Is that what you prefer to read?
I actually enjoy reading a lot more realistic writing, as funny as that is, because I am a fantasy writer. I like reading a lot of like situations that could be real, like Nora Roberts, for example. 2 of my favorite books by her are actually about situations that could actually happen. It's fictional writing, but it's situations that could actually occur, and just kind of like how people live their everyday lives while you have this, more major story plot going. I do love fantasy. Like I loved the Tolkien books, like The Hobbit. I probably read The Hobbit 3 times in a row when I was introduced to it in 9th grade.
Yeah.
But so no, I like a wide variety of reading, that's for sure.
Okay, so like the hobbits on the way to Mordor, wherever it is, you just started out your own journey, like into writing. How did you how did you first begin writing? Do you remember your earliest writing? Was it fantasy based, or was it have you always been a precocious writer? Do you think, or an average writer?
I actually, okay, so the earliest thing that I remember writing was I tried to rewrite Lord of the Rings when I saw it for the first time on movie platform. I was like, wow, this is so great. And like, by then I had just kind of realized, you can write things down. So I took this little itty bitty pink notebook and I started trying to rewrite my favorite parts of Lord of the Rings. But I mean, that didn't exactly go anywhere. So my real writing actually started in 7th grade because the school that I went to offered a creative writing class, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this was something that you could do. I remember that I had tried like an extracurricular writing class in elementary school, but it was just kind of like you come in once and then you leave and they take care of everything else. So being like in an actual like academic class, you know, was a huge starting point. And it evolved throughout the years as different like teachers and stuff came in, because like my first teacher, he was just like, go write whatever you want, just have fun, as long as, you know, as long as you're doing that and not something else. And then from there, the other teachers that followed were like, okay, this is the writing prompt that I'm going to give you guys for, you know, the next 3 weeks, you know, and it definitely helped hone in my writing skills, because, you know, I would write the kind of like the first person, you know, like, then this happened, with like no real like flushing it out. But through taking the class and having the teacher like point things out, and then like being introduced to like the senses part of writing, you know, and describing a scene, I suddenly became a descriptive nut. And I would describe absolutely everything. And it's just kind of evolved from there. I would even say in the last year since I wrote my first book, my writing style has changed.
Yeah, it's good to always be evolving with it and like learning, you know, and developing, that kind of thing, isn't it? Right. So so do you remember have you got any like the early stuff that you used to write? Any particularly good stories? Someone said something about 3 kittens. Is there a story of 3 kittens? Is that an early piece of work of yours that we may see rewritten in a future day?
That was the elementary. That was the elementary thing I mentioned. That was the extracurricular, like, hey, if you want to come to this, you know. So that's when I was like, ooh, writing. And then my mom was like, well, hey, you know, your school offers or will offer in the spring, you know, this yeah, little devil faces. I see you, Life with 2 YouTubers. So she's like, well, do you want to try this extracurricular thing? And I was like, well, sure, why not? So basically, they just had us in this classroom. I think we only went like 2 times, and they just had us write a short story, in the hour after school. And then what they did is they took all the kids' stories and they typed them up and they put them into these like white cover books. So it was just like kids' first book, you know. So
your first published work.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess technically that's my first self-published work, yes. But I've always grown up with a lot of cats. I mean, I've probably always had an average of 4 cats in the house all of my life. So I had decided to spin a story about 2 of my cats having a litter of 3 kittens, and it went.
So it's a family drama then, a family cat drama.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So what about this one, your very first book? Why did you wake up one morning and go, I'm going to write a book? Or what happened there? What's the story?
This lovely one right here?
That spectacular looking one there, yeah, looks good. Isle of the Dark. Is it Isle of the Dark?
Isle of the Dark, yeah.
Yeah. I keep trying to add a the to the beginning of it, but there isn't, is there?
No, yeah, it's just Isle, yeah. It was kind of weird how it came about. The novel itself was actually inspired off of a short story that I had written for my brother. Oh my gosh, no. Mom just dropped a super chat just to say I have a lot of dirt.
See, that was bribery, that word. She's that's to ask you a special question later on. She said, I'll get extra money the more embarrassed I make you.
Probably, gosh. So me and my brother really, really love this game. And, you know, this game was, you know, like our center of attention a couple years ago. And I realized that there's 2 characters in the game that don't ever get to meet. They don't really ever get to interact. My brother and I had watched, like, you know, stuff on like YouTube of these 2 characters interacting, and the whole game hadn't been released yet. So for his birthday, I decided to write a comical short story, finishing up the game in how I wanted to see it end. And that's where I carried it. And then I gave it to him on his birthday, and he loved it. And then I realized, well, dang, I really want, this type of character A, and this type of character B, to interact more. And I suddenly started thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to create these two character types, and I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to see what happens. So the whole book was dedicated to reaching that one scene that I had envisioned with these two characters. So you have your older, slightly weathered soldier, and then you have this young, comedic character that is actually supposed to be the enemy. And the whole entire me getting from point A to point B was just to have that one scene that I wanted between these two characters. And then everything else just kind of came after it. So I sat there and I started thinking, I'm like, okay, well, how do I want to get these characters to this point? And then, every now and then I would run into like an issue, like, well, that doesn't exactly work. So, how can I fix this? And then suddenly have to create a bunch of background to be able to fix the issue. And it was supposed to be like a short story. It wasn't supposed to turn into a novel, but I was like, ooh, I want this to happen, and ooh, I want this to happen, and then this can lead into this. And then almost like 450 pages later, I had this complete story that was like the first story I had actually finished that was novel-like. And I was like, okay, well, it's going to take a lot of work, but maybe I can actually do something with this. And so that was the goal. I did an initial revision through it, just kind of reading it, cutting stuff out. It was a little too long, got rid of some stuff. And then in high school, my final year of high school, I took creative writing class one more time. And the project for the whole year was that we were supposed to write a short book. So not a short story, but it wasn't supposed to be a novel, or what classifies as a novel. And I just looked at my teacher and I said, hey, I already have this book here. May I spend my class time revising it? And she was like, sure, why not? It was my final year of school, just, whatever. Yes, Photosynthesis Lobo. There will be another book. There's actually several more after this book. I think there's 3 more following Isle of the Dark that follows your main characters, Ranger and Isle. And then there's actually going to be a second series that follows a different cast of characters later in the universe.
Cool. I'll save me asking that question later on.
So no, and then it kind of evolved, because then when I graduated, I had this story. I had already set my mind that I wanted to be a writer, or at least kind of give like a stab at it, just see what happens. So I was just going to upload the book to Amazon, because I knew that was a thing, and that was really kind of the only option I had really considered at the time. And then I started, researching, and I started, investing time into learning about self-publishing. And then one day, out of the blue, one of our friends on Facebook, his sister had just published her first book. And it was like an actual like hardbound cover book. And we were like, how did she do that? So I started researching, and I found the person who ran the company that published her book, and everything just kind of melted from there. And then 6 more revisions later of the story, it was finally done. So no, the book was kind of an accident, and then it kind of meshed into, all right, this is my first work that I want to try
Yeah.
be out there as an author.
So you kind of started it as a fan fiction. What was this game that you based it on?
It was called Bendy and the Ink Machine, and you play it's a first person game, and you're kind of trying to figure out like the puzzles as you go along, and there's like, there's like tasks you have to complete in puzzles, but it's a horror game.
Right.
Like a mild horror game.
Right.
And the main enemy, you never really figure out his story. Supposedly there is a second game coming, much to me and my brother's delight. But you never really figure out his backstory, and just a lot of the things that we had seen off of YouTube painted this bad guy in a different light for your player to interact with. So I wrote the ending of the game before the ending of the game came out.
Okay, but when you actually came to put it into your own story and decided you was going to, rather than just being a fan fiction, you're going to make something out of it, did you change the name of the characters?
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Ranger's name was actually kind of accidental as well, because I knew that I kind of wanted him to be after kind of like the stereotype of the Lone Ranger, soldier type deal.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, what's a good, kind of like unusual name? And then I was sitting there thinking about, I'm like, well, why not Ranger? Who, this is my own world. Who says that, the word ranger has to mean, like a park ranger? It could be someone's name.
Yeah, I think ranger from like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that is like a forest ranger, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's what my mind goes to. Did you say that one of the other characters called Isle? So Isle is actually someone's name.
Yes. And it was just kind of like a play on words, because I had figured out the title of the story, and it was going to be Isle of the Dark. It was either going to be that or The Darkest Isle. It was going to be one of the two. But then and I even have a character in the middle of the book mention how ironic Isle's name is. So it was kind of a play on words that, Isle's name is, parallel to kind of the book itself. It was just kind of like a play on names that I was like, haha. But
okay, that's confusing. I definitely have to read it to work that out, because I always thought it was like Isle. So it's not actually based on an island then. Oh, when you just like thinking of it, Isle of the Dark, I think it's an island of darkness, like somewhere. It's nothing to do with that.
No, it's
I've completely ruined my perception of it now.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't know Isle meant like, I didn't realize that it actually meant like an island.
Yeah.
That did not. I just knew that it was like a designated like place, or like a small area or small island. So I was like, well, I mean, it still kind of works, because I mean, the Isle of Dark that they talk about halfway through the book is this small little, it's like a nest. So
that's interesting. Yankee Southerner says it took Tolkien 20 years to world build. How long did your world take? So when you when you first started as a short fan fiction for one scene before you connected it, how long was the process from like you starting writing the short story to you actually having the book in your hands? How long did that take?
The first draft only took 6 months. I am constantly world building. I am constantly like, well, that doesn't exactly work, so let's change this. And the stuff that I have flittering around in my brain no longer affects the first book, but it could affect books to come. So that's why I'm like, okay, I need to refine, this universe a little bit more. So this doesn't ever really turn off. I actually have a slight problem going to sleep.
I was just saying, do you have a notebook next to the bed for when you wake up in the night and have to write things down? Yeah,
that's what this is for. Yeah, it's actually like a little notepad. There's like a pen in it and stuff. So it's like I think that's actually happened a couple times where I'll wake up like in the night, or like I'll wake up in the morning and be like, man, that was really good. I need to write that down.
Yeah, and even when you probably I dare say, even when you're gonna sleep and you're no longer you're dreaming it, you're dreaming it in your head all the time as well.
Yeah.
So what is the name of the world that all this stuff goes on, this planet, and what kind of laws? When we get to read the book, is there magic there? Is there? I know there's monsters, the Datso, because I've read the synopsis. But you know, what is the story? Are they summoned by magic? Was it a magical accident that created this virus or plague?
Yeah, so no, the backstory, the kind of world, the universe that they live in, it was originally supposed to, and I actually had to change the beginning, like the prologue of the book, multiple times to fix this. It was actually supposed to be our Earth. It was supposed to be something that was lost in our history. But as I got further into the story, I was like, you know, because the origin of the Datso in the original draft wasn't something that was there. The only thing that you had was there was a Datso that already existed and then created the rest of the plague. And I had a couple of people point out to me, well, like, where did it come from, you know? So then I started trying to think about, okay, well, you know, what if the species was created, but then that caused some issues. So I eventually threw out that it was the same world as ours and it lives in its own little universe. It is Earth, basically. I don't really have like a name for the planet or anything. It is just Earth. It's just a different Earth. So basically the history starts out with the Judavarians, which are, you know, high magical, you know, godlike beings. And they live alongside humans, people. And they create basically everything. They can create new plants. They, you know, control the weather. You know, they create new animals. And, you know, they're kind of very, you know, many of them, you know, have very inflated egos because they see themselves as, you know, what their versions of gods are. And, well, then they create the Datso. And then everything backfires. There was actually a first plague that you know, was kind of swept under the rug because the Judavarians took care of it, and that's why in the story there's this purple rose that is actually very deadly to Datsos, and it's because the Judavarians created it. So, but they missed one Datso, and then that's where it comes in. You have this one Datso, it creates the plague, the second plague, but nobody really knows that, and then and now that's where the modern time is. So, and then that's the kind of history is like, and I finally got everything to line up just the way I want it. I will let you guys know if you're ever creating a universe, there's a lot of math involved. I created their year system based off of different eras, and the new era that the book takes place in, the modern time frame that the book takes place in, is 222 years after the plague begins for the mortals. And that's how they list everything, is they say, you know, today is the blah blah day of the blah blah season of the year 222 Datso plague, and they abbreviate it as DP. So, and then realizing this, you know, between characters, ages, and people, like the timeline falling into place, I have actually I have a few notebooks just that have pages of just all this math, trying to figure out how everything works.
How are the people surviving with all this plague of monsters?
Werewolf by Lunchtime, yes, I do like Shakespeare. It's well, the purple rose that the Judavarians created actually became their saving grace. So the history that takes place, and the prologue of the book actually covers the majority of all this history. There's two kingdoms, and you have like a southern kingdom and you have a northern kingdom, and they're at war. And while they are at war, the Datso plague begins. So all of a sudden they have to join forces to fight the monsters. So what they end up doing is they, you know, while they're battling and they're losing a lot of men, because the plague, if a Datso bites a living creature, it turns into another Datso. So they're trying to figure out how to stay away from them, but also try and stop this plague from spreading. So then they discover the purple rose, and they realize that the purple rose is deadly to the monsters. So what they end up doing is they back it up. They back it up like halfway down their continent, or like a third of the way down their continent. They abandon the northern kingdom, all the cities and stuff that they had up there, or towns, I guess, villages, and they all descend and they just kind of retreat. But then they take these flowers and they plant them across the country. And then just over the course of time, this rose wall has just gotten thicker, and and the bushes grow taller. So, but the Datsos can't get over it.
Yeah.
So then they created these gates, and these gates lead through old trails that would have taken you to the northern kingdoms in case they ever needed them. So the top half of this continent has basically just been left for the Datsos to do whatever they want to do. And then all the humans now live on the bottom half.
Right.
And then you have soldiers and trained guardians that now protect the wall in case a flying Datso comes over to create some trouble.
They can do that, can they? So there's also, so I take it, like, for example, if a bird is bitten by a Datso, it becomes a flying Datso.
Yeah.
It's just like, so it's like you maintain the similar characteristics to what you were before, but monsterized. Is that right?
Yeah. So, skin tone, or, like our feathers or fur, I guess, can change. And for people, it works a little bit differently. Some actually still look like people after they've been transformed. Other times, they just completely turn into something different. So yeah, they do have similar physical attributes to what they did before. So it's like, if you're looking at a Datso, you can kind of tell, like, okay, yeah, that was probably a deer, or yeah, that kind of looks like a wolf, or something like that. But they will have, like, just these random horns, or, they'll have gashes or holes, and just stuff like that. So they are very, like, they're very monstrous and almost kind of zombie-like, but it's not.
So you say the purple rose kills the Datso. So do they, like, put the sap of it on their sword, or they can they use the rose wood, like the wood from the rose bushes? Does that get turned into spears and arrows? What is it actually? What actual element of the purple rose is it? Is it the pollen or the scent, or what is it that actually kills the Datso of the purple rose?
I never thought of the wood. That's actually a really good idea. No, they so it is partially the pollen, but there's also these thorns that are on the rose bushes. So if a Datso, like, steps into the rose bushes, it cuts them, and and it has, like, the sap, and it injects the sap, and then it poisons it and kills it. The air quality also doesn't help. Datsos generally kind of stay away from the rose wall on their side of the border, just because, like, the smell kind of messes them up a little bit. But no, they take, they'll take the rose petals and they'll, like, ground them up, and they'll turn them into, like liquid, kind of like how they do with I know I'm thinking of something. I'm not sure what plant I'm thinking of, but they do take the sap from, like, the thorns, and they do take the petals themselves, and they'll snip off, like, flowers, and they'll ground them up and turn them into these little vials, and they'll use them on, like, crossbows and stuff like that, and then arrows, bigger arrows, so they can use them, and the archers at each gate is designated to fire them to try and take down Datsos before they get too far. So
is it like a medieval kind of, like, time frame, seeming like, so people are riding around on horseback, so they're not going around in attack helicopters or nothing like that?
No. if they had machines and helicopters, they could probably get this a little bit more under control. But no, it's horses, swords, arrows. That's
the typical kind of fantasy era. But I think it's cool. It's very inventive, very interesting. Was the Datso, was that part of the original game? Monster. Was it?
Oh, the game that. No.
But was it like it's a horror game, you said? But so they just totally invented for your own sort of extrapolation of the original story.
No, it is no, the Bendy and Ink Machine game is a horror game, and you do fight against like horror people, I guess is the only way I can describe that.
Yeah.
But no, Datsos were completely my idea up in my brain. And originally when it was supposed to be a part of our history, they were actually just supposed to be called demons, because you have like a lot of like Christian or Catholic, and it's because it was supposed to line up with our history. So they would have been called like, demons, like demons sent from the underworld or whatever. But then I started running into issues, and I was like, nah, this doesn't work. So I went into the handy dandy Google Translate and started flipping through different languages and stuff. And so I kind of just flip through different languages and see how different languages kind of pronounce demon. And I didn't really like a whole lot of them. So I ended up just kind of meshing a few together and then just throwing in a couple of letters and rearranging vowels into something that I liked.
All right. That's cool. But they're basically just demons. But yeah, cool, interesting. Yankee Sam was asking how much your book costs. The link down below to the blog gets you to all of Rina's pages. But how much is it in the USA?
Isle of the Dark is just $14.95.
Cool.
And then the Tales of the Weird and Strange book is $10.99.
I mean, he's got some of those already because he's on it. Yankee Sam is in that book as well.
No, that's true. Yeah, so my personal one is just $14.95.
Yeah, cool. So when you first got the book, like, what was your thoughts when you first had it in your hand? Yeah,
I cried.
You cried.
I cried.
Yeah. And I mean, how did it go? You started off just as a hobby, just a bit of fun, like, and then you sort of just you caught on, then you just started more and more sort of feverishly sort of getting it done kind of thing. And when did you decide that I'm actually going to put this out and I'm going to try and sell it and this is going to be a thing? I mean, was there a particular moment where you sort of went from being a bit of fun, a bit of a hobby, to being, this is what I want to do?
Through high school, I realized that I just enjoyed writing a lot. And I mean, I really hadn't thought of it as a career path. Because I had kind of like mapped out what I was going to do. Cause like I was gonna go to college right after high school, and I was going to go for 4 years, get my degrees. And then I was just going to, and they changed it a little bit to where now, your first 2 years of college have to be kind of more general education. And then, but then your second 2 years, and then whatever on after that, you can take courses specifically toward whatever it is you're working at. So I was going to go to college, and I was going to do like the 2 years. And then during the 2 years, I was just going to figure out, what I really wanted to settle down and do. Because I was kind of thinking of being a teacher for kids, just because like I love little kids a lot. But I was kind of like, well, I don't know if I just want to settle with being a teacher, but like, I'm not athletic. I'm fairly decent at math, even though I curse it. I didn't really have any aspirations to do anything else other than teach. But then in the meanwhile, I was writing all these short stories, and like kind of for the last few years, before writing Isle, like for every Christmas, I would write my mom these short stories and I would give them to her for Christmas. So, I don't know where she gets it from. I hate kids, life of two YouTubers. And I hadn't thought of being an author and being like an artist, like a writing artist, as a possible career choice. But I think I was, if I remember this correctly, I think I was just talking to my mom and dad about it, and they're like, well, you're always writing. Why not do something with like write a book? And I was like, oh, I guess I didn't really think that, this was something I could do. So I just keep glancing over, Mom. So, I wasn't sure, really what I wanted to do. And this was like, before Isle. So I had kind of told myself that I was like, okay, I'm going to go do my first 2 years of college, take some creative writing courses, learn what I can about, being an author. But the thing is that it's not like I already could write, if it makes sense. I had spent, my middle school and high school years in creative writing classes already. Um, and a lot of people who read my stuff told me that I had a natural gift for it, of just storytelling, even if the writing itself wasn't, fluid or author like, I had this gift of just storytelling. I often don't shut up. So I apologize in advance. Um, but and then but then I realized, and then after I wrote Isle, because I had written and finished and revised Isle in the last 2 years of high school, I had something and I could do something with this book. So it was kind of the plan for a few years during high school to, look at becoming a writer, but it's like I didn't need to take more classes on stuff that I already knew. And by the end of high school, I had something to test the waters with. I guess if that kind of answers the question. So I knew for a while that I wanted to be a writer, and I knew before I had written Isle that it was something that I could do, but it wasn't until Isle that I was like, okay, this is what I'm using. Now that I'm out of high school, let me focus my attention and energy into seeing if I can get this published.
Yeah. And you started off with self-publishing. Have you tried showing it to anybody, any publishers, or are you just happy to go the self-publishing route at the moment?
Not yet, but the next book that I'm working on, I am going to try and poke some publishers with. And just kind of see what happens, or see, see what the rates are, or kind of what the expectations or the regulations, all that stuff. So, because if it doesn't end up working and the book just kind of like gets out there, but doesn't really do anything, even if it's with a, like a traditional publisher, at least I know,
Yeah. I imagine it's very hard to get into that world now, I should think. So a lot of people are doing the self-publishing route, aren't they? So,
yeah.
How have the sales been so far? How long has it been on sale for? When did the first book? So when was it actually officially released? Did you have a little release party or anything like that, or any special kind of launches for it?
It was the book was published on my 19th birthday, so we actually held the live event. We held 2 different live streams that day. Because I was going to do like a first book signing, and we were going to have like family and friends come over, and I was going to just like hand out some books at our local comic shop, actually, because we knew the owner. But then COVID hit, and everything shut down right as we were starting to, because I had the book and I had ordered my first copies of the book. And then, like I said, I cried when I held the first one. And so the plan was, we had, these 2 boxes of books. We were going to go out. We were just going to try and sell some at our local, our LCS on my birthday. But then he shut down like a week or 2 prior. So, and knowing, and this was when, our governor was like, okay, everything shuts down for 2 weeks. The only place you can go is the grocery store. So, we were kind of all home for a little bit. And although I was working, I was still the grocery store chick at the time. So, but then we were like, okay, well, we know everybody on YouTube already. And we had been doing the I Love show for, I think, about 5 months at that point. So we just hosted it online, and it was great. That first day, I think we sold, what was it, 100 books?
Wow. That's pretty decent.
100 that first day.
That is good.
Well, we had some pre-sales too. So there were some people who had pre-bought the book that we announced during the live show, but then everybody who joined during that. So I think the first go, I think we sold 100 or close to 100 books. But
Is it a thing where you've got a certain amount? Did you buy like a bulk amount, or is it printed up into order, or how is it done?
I have to order them. So the way that my publisher set it up is it is on Amazon KDP, so it did eventually go through there. So I can order author copies for myself. So I do have to pay a little bit just for like the shipping and for each copy that they manufacture. But then they just send them to me. So that first time I ordered 100. And then almost got rid of all of them. So then, like, since then, I've just been ordering like 50, like, regularly, just to
That's
so that I
nice.
have a stock.
Yeah.
I have an official book cabinet downstairs.
And you've managed to get them out to other shops as well, haven't you? Local shops to send
Yeah.
them for you. How far have you managed to spread the bookshops taking them on?
I am now in 6 states.
That's good. That's good.
So of just really supportive bookstores that have taken you just like 5 copies here or 8 copies here, and we've been working on consignments and just wholesale. So yeah, I'm based in Michigan. I know that there's a bookstore looking at one of my books in Florida, and there's a lot of, because I have a lot of family down in Florida, so there's a lot of the books in circulation down in Florida.
That's
Just
cool.
between like friends and family.
Yeah.
I have another one in California. Lawrence Everett, who was one of the other people who worked on Tales of Weird and Strange, was very gracious enough to have one of my books placed in Ohio and Virginia. And then I know there's another one, and I know the name of the bookstore, but I don't remember what state it's in.
Is there any way you can like find like a chain bookstore and see if they would take books from you? Is there any way of like putting it forward to find out if they would do that?
I've just been working on local bookstores at the moment. So I'm in 14 bookstores locally and in the different states I mentioned.
Yeah.
And
I see you've been getting checks in as well. You was doing your first paycheck, and are they taking more books from you once you've started?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's going well then.
So a lot of the consignment plans that we do, we give it like a few months. So, like they'll take, like X amount of copies, and then, they're like, okay, we're going to let these, sit for people to see for, 3 months, or whatever the consignment entails. And then like at the end of each month, if any books have sold, we will send you a check. So a lot of the bookstores that I am in contact with are a lot of the ones that I had reached out to even from the beginning when I started reaching out to local bookshops. I did look at a chain bookstore, because, like the aspiration was to get into like, Barnes and Noble, which is a fairly popular bookstore. It's like this giant bookstore like chain in the US. So, kind of the aspiration was to get in there because it's like, not a small bookstore, but not quite a library. It was just like the perfect, like, it's like the Target for books. I think that's the only way I can say it. So, we were looking at it, and they actually have a lot of hoops that you have to jump through.
Yeah.
And there is no guarantee that they will keep your books on the shelf for more than just a few months.
Right.
They did say that they would host, like events if you were a local author, but just a lot of the stuff that they wanted was like, I don't know if we have the means to do this right now.
Yeah.
Because we had just published the book and we didn't really have any like prior like book history with other bookstores, and and it was my first book. It was my first time out, and they had kind of wanted like a history. So I was just kind of like, well, why don't we come back to them later after, we've tried, like local shops.
Cool. Any plans to make an audio version?
Maybe. I don't know. I've talked about that with, my folks and stuff before, and I think that could be interesting. I just don't know who would voice it. We've joked that John's Comics with Kids has like the perfect voice to do that.
You could get different people from the community to do different voices for you. Different people voicing the different characters, and like one person doing the full narration. That might be an idea. So also recently, I think you've decided to sort of like, this is going to be my job. This is what I'm going to do for my living. And you're really concentrating now on doing it full time. I mean, how much do you write in a day? Do you reckon you're sitting there like 5 hours, 10 hours?
Well, I do dedicate it around a 8-hour workday. And a lot of times it's more than that. Because my mom, she'll be at work all day, and then she'll come home and she'll help me with some of the stuff that like promotional stuff and videos and advertising. And on weekends, like this Saturday we have our show with Old Wolf. So tomorrow we have our for whatever reason I didn't realize today was Friday. So tomorrow, we're running around to a couple different bookstores. We're visiting friends tomorrow, and then we have the show tomorrow night. So it's like I do focus my days when I'm home at my desk around an 8-hour workday, but a lot of times it probably eats up a lot more, like closer to 9 or 10. And then Sundays are kind of the day we just kind of go meh. But I do work on Saturdays too, because my mom's home, and we can divide and conquer, and she helps me with a lot of the technical stuff because computers hate me and I hate computers.
Right.
But I do write a lot, and I'm working on multiple projects too. So yeah, I write several hours each day.
Cool.
I probably write anywhere between 3 to 5 hours, I'd say, on average in a day. And then just kind of the rest of the day goes toward answering emails, research, social media, networking.
So you're very focused then. You're not like sitting there like staring out the window, chewing your pencil or something for most of the day.
I mean, every now and then I'll have to stop and be like, okay, what comes next?
Yeah.
I read a lot too. I've tried to kick up my reading because that is beneficial as an author, to kind of be exposed to different styles and how other people do it. Like the book that I'm reading right now, a great book. It's called ironically, Isle of Winds, by James Frey.
Is it someone with bad stomach problems, like eating too much beans or something like that? Is it?
No.
I was getting the idea. No, it's not. Okay, all right. That's what I thought, just my guess.
No, and I follow James Frey on Instagram, and he's actually a pretty funny guy. And he writes fantasy as well, so that's what I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
But I had read like a Nora Roberts prior, and I know that I've read who else have I read? I know that I've read. I have like this library circled like right here. So it's like, where's the other author I know I read recently?
I think reading other authors is all part of research, isn't it? It's all part of learning and growing your own style of writing as well. But when you actually sort of decided to go full time doing it, when people say, "Hi, who are you?" You say, "Oh, I'm Rina." Do you say, "Hi, I'm Rina. I'm an author"? How do you introduce yourself now? Do you say, "I'm an author"? If people say, "What do you do?"
It's kind of weird.
I'm an author.
It's kind of weird, actually. I had actually just been talking to someone the other day, and they asked me, they're like, "Well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I kind of have like my own business thing going because I'm an author." And he's like, "Oh, that's really cool." So I think it surprises people a lot that I'm only 19 and that I've focused my life on one career track right now.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I tell people.
Do you have business cards? You say, "I'm an author," and you give me a business card like that.
I know I have one somewhere.
You need more than one if you're gonna make it. You're gonna need more than one.
Oh yeah, no, I order these in bulk like constantly.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. And what about, have you had any reviews, any critics? What have people been saying about it? Do you like, are you in the position like you want us to see a review, or are you in a position where you're like, "Oh, I hope the review's not going to be bad," or something like that? How do you feel about reviews? And like a lot of critics can be arseholes, can't they, to be frank? But have you had any bad receptions, good receptions?
No, lots of good receptions. I've had a lot of positive feedback. During the editing stages of the book, I had a few different people like test read it. And I did get some criticism back for it. But I mean, I don't look at criticism as necessarily negative. Every now and then I go,
Creative criticism is good.
Well, and it's not like it's like your writing sucks. It was just more of like, you know, like, hey, this doesn't make sense. And I'm very grateful that these things were pointed out to me, because I ended up shifting things to fix it. And so no, I mean, every now and then I'll be kind of nitpicky, just because, you know, it's like if it affects the storyline directly, I'll be like, well, I kind of want to keep this, but I see what you mean. I need to change it. So like I'll be slightly butthurt, but no, I greatly appreciate you know, the criticism, and just somebody saying, you know, like, you know, just saying like, this was an issue, or, you know, I wish I'd seen this more. You know, it's like, it's just to help me more as a writer. You know, like I said earlier, you know, I've even noticed that since I wrote my first book, my writing style has changed slightly. You know, so it's like the more I can use to learn and grow.
Are you like your own worst critic as well? Do you go back on things that you've written before and go, oh, why did I write it like that? Why didn't I do this instead? Are you like that? Or are you like, I've done that now, I'm not going to go back and revisit it? Forwards, no more looking back. How do you think?
No, I'm a very, very heavy self-critic. Because one thing, and they always say, you know, that if you're having trouble, you know, with working or whatever, take 5 minutes, go get up, do something else, and then come back at it with a fresh set of eyes. That it kind of applies to me, but in the way of criticism, because I will because I like rereading a lot of stuff too, and especially like if I'm working on a project and I need to catch myself back up to where I was trying to lead the scene. You know, I'll be reading back, I'll be like, this is terrible. What was I thinking? And I'll either have to add something in to fix it, or I'll just delete it and redo it, you know. Every now and then I'll just have like this flare of genius where I'm like, yes, this line is meant to be here. No, I'm not going to change. I had one of those moments the other day. I was working on one of my projects, and I just kind of described something in such a way that I was like, hey, I really like that. So I'm like, and I still haven't touched it. I've changed things around it since then, but I still will not touch that line. But no, I am a very heavy critic. I will go back and be like, what was I thinking here? And, you know, I'm like, I guess I see where this was going, but it's like, why?
Yeah. Well, the time has gone really quick now. I need to step up with some questions. So let's move on to this then. Let's move on to this. One of the other things that you've done recently. You've got 2 stories in here, which I read today, both interesting. I think the whole concept of the book is all to be based around mythology of like your local area, wasn't it? And with these ones, it was the mad axe ghost woman, Mrs. McCready, whatever her name, I can't remember who it was now. And the other one was like the Devil Road or the Hell's Highway. Yeah. Were they actual real local mythology that you've heard, grown up with, or is it something you researched?
No, it was stuff I researched. I live a lot. So the 2 stories I had done in the book was one about the Red Rocks Amphitheater for all of you guys who live in Colorado with me. And the other one was about Route 666, which I believe has been renamed to Route 491. And it just cuts through Colorado. It's not exclusive to Colorado, but it does cut through Colorado. So Red Rocks Amphitheater I live fairly close to. It's only like let's say it's only like a 20-minute drive from where I live. But Hell's Highway is like on the opposite side of the state.
That second one, it sounded like was there 3 different myths all put into the one story. It felt like 3 different myths all in one story. Yeah. Sorry.
So no, you're okay. No, so like the Red Rocks one, there is a ghost that supposedly haunts there, and her name is Old Miss Johnson, and supposedly she wields this hatchet and she scares people. And the 2 legends that were surrounded around her were, one was she used to carry the hatchet to scare away young suitors for her daughters. And then the other one was she was already kind of crazy, and she lived in the Red Rocks area with her husband, and before the amphitheater was built. And then when her husband died, she just completely lost it and like turned into a hermit and moved up into the Red Rocks. And then during construction of the amphitheater and everything, she would run out and like try and swipe at people and she would scare them off. But then whenever the authorities would show up, she was gone. So, you know, I had kind of just used both different spins on her ghost story, and I put them into one for the horror short that I wrote, the first one. And then Hell's Highway has a lot of different myths around it. People claim that they see, you know, shapeshifters. People claim that they have seen ghostly lights. A lot of people say that if they are driving alone on the highway, a lot of times people have reported that they get run off the road, or people have actually died because of the devil's black sedan. And this sedan will just dog you and will hit your bumper until you either spin off or you get off the road, and then he's just gone. So I incorporated a few of the different legends surrounding the road itself into the other short story as well.
So the shapeshifters, and in your story, I don't want to give spoilers away, but it's like turns out to be a benevolent kind of spirit rather than a malevolent one. So is that part of the mythology, or did you add that spin yourself?
No, that is part of it. They say that there are a lot of like, I think a lot of people report they see like Native Americans and stuff like that, or you know, people who would have once owned the land. And they claim that they see these shapeshifter spirits with their hands out on the side of the road as if telling you to stop. Don't go any further.
That's really weird. I just got to interrupt for a second. I got a little shiver when I read the story when that bit happened. And when you just said it again, I got another little shiver go through. Like there's something about ghosts doing that kind of warning thing that gets me. I get a little like, ooh. I remember that it happened when I read it, and it happened again when you just mentioned it just then, like a little woo shiver down my legs for some reason. So I think that's a positive critique. They did a good job. They give me a little, a little frisson of fear.
Thank you. But no, I based the stories all around the legends. The only thing that I had created was, you know, the circumstance and the characters, but the legends themselves are all real. Yeah.
And you already spoke that you're working on submission for the next book as well.
Yes. And I had mentioned Life with Two YouTubers had said earlier that her story is done because she is also contributing to the next volume.
That's another point I was going to ask, actually, because Kade, your little brother's on this one as well.
Yep.
And Sharon and Kade are both going to be on the next one as well. How do you feel about that? Are they stealing your thunder? Are they trying to elbow in on your gig? What's going on?
No. Lawrence Everett had actually asked Kade if he wanted to contribute, because Kade is an artist. He is good at drawing. It is insane. Like for what I lack in artistic skills, he makes up for. Some of the stuff he draws is insane. Lawrence was actually looking for other people to contribute some art pieces to the story, and Kade, you know, was like, "Oh, I'll do it." And then before the final version, before the tales was done, he asked if Kade wanted to contribute just to like a 1-page short story, and Kade was like, "Sure." So, so he did get to. So Mom helped him research a place, and he got to write the story. And man, his writing, I may be outshined if he continues. He may become the author before I do, because you know, he's younger than I was when I started writing like seriously. And his writing is already really good. It is insane. You know, I was reading this, I'm like, where did you get some of this from? And he's like, I don't know.
Has he caught the bug then? Is he sort of writing more, or is it just a one-off?
No, that was just the one-off. Yeah. I have seen him do some writing because, Kade is very interested in creating his own video game. And I know that he had been writing, you know, like backgrounds for like some of the games that he thought, he wants to create.
Yeah.
And that stuff is really good too. He puts like descriptions and stuff in there, and I was like, dang, bro. So, but no, I'm actually really excited that they're both contributing because, Life with Two YouTubers will never admit it, but she has a very good writing hand as well.
Yeah,
And it kind of runs in the family. I think somebody had said like apple doesn't fall far, or
from
like
the tree.
writer's
Yeah,
blood or something like that.
yeah, cool.
um so no, I'm very excited, and yes, I am working on my next story for the next volume.
Have you got already planned what mythology? Is it all going to be about mythology again, or are you going to move on to like different scopes, different things?
It's not so much about mythology this time, or ghosts or spirits,
Folklore,
and
yeah.
I'll leave it at that. I don't want to
Right.
expose too much.
That's cool. And what other things you got planned? I mean, obviously, you say you're working on the next Isle of the Dark. You said it's going to be a ongoing kind of.
Yeah, no, Isle of the Dark, I think everybody knows the basic premise at this point. So your main two characters, Ranger and Isle, you will see them for 3 more books. There's 4 books centered around them.
Hmm.
And then, just kind of depending on how the future brings, or what the future brings and how the series does, there is a second series planned in the same universe, just with kind of like a different set, like fresh blood after
Hmm.
the first 4 with your main 2 dudes.
How,
um
how did that come about? You suddenly decided, was it like you sort of, oh, this would be a good story, and this would be a good story, this would be a good story. I'm gonna make it, is that how it came up, or?
a little bit. Oh, bye werewolf. Yeah, go to sleep. um so yeah, I when I wrote the first one, because the first one can be very standalone, but I didn't want it to be. I wanted more with these characters, and doing just some of the world building and knowing where I kind of wanted their stories to lead. I realized that more books were necessary. And then I realized, okay, I can really divide this into 3 main books and touch on everything that I want to touch on in these 3 books. So,
Hmm.
it kind of future, I guess this is like your guys's what you call it, Easter eggs, or like uh spoilers, I guess. Not really
Right, right,
spoilers,
yeah,
but like the hints. um
yeah.
because the first one focuses, because the 2 and 3 each focus on one character in particular. So your first one was kind of like Ranger and Isle meeting, and it was the first story, and their first adventure together. Second one kind of focuses on the lineage of one of the characters, and then the third book focuses on the lineage of the other character. And you get a lot more of the universe, and you understand a lot more of what makes that universe. And it touches on like family for both characters. And then the fourth one, their final adventure together takes place a lot later, and it's kind of more of a mystery
Hmm.
situation that they have to go through.
Well, you've all got it all planned out. Is
I
that how
did,
you?
yeah. And
Well,
then the second series was just kind of an accident. I realized, because I wanted them to get their happy, like I kind of want them to have a happy after, ever.
right.
And I'm like, and I wanted to include somewhere in the series just that glimmer of what their future will look like after the run is over. And I couldn't really figure it out. And then I started world building, the future characters, and kind of what the future would look like for them. And then I was like, oh, wait, I know. I know what I'm gonna do now. And then it created a second series, and
Uh,
now I can't reel out of it.
how far are you into book 2?
Pretty far. I have, I don't know, I want to say a third, almost a half of the way down to the second one.
Right, cool. So, what kind of time frame do you expect we'll be seeing it on the shelves?
I don't know, because it's not the first thing that I'm putting out. I am still working on the Tales project, and I have another book. I think a lot of you know that I had my Wattpad story called Sinner. Um,
Yeah.
So I realized that there wasn't much exposure for the story on that platform, and so I'm taking it, I'm finishing it, and that is the story that I'm going to try and actually publish. And it's just kind of be like its own like standalone book. And then as time goes on, Isle will definitely resurface probably after that.
So you thinking maybe you'll do the Isle series and bring out like other books, like here and there. I was thinking, how about a book of short stories? Go back to all the stories you made for your mum at Christmas, and rehash them all for like rewrite all the stories as a series of a short story book. How would that work? Would that be any good?
Maybe, I don't know. See, the problem is the main three, and she knows which three I'm talking about. They are all in the prime position to be short books themselves. Yeah, like not necessarily a novel, but with just like a regular
novella.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's possible that I could try and mesh them all into one, but I'd have to leave a lot out.
Because there's quite a lot of people like self-publishing and like doing anthology books. Have you thought about see if you can get into any other books similar to this one, like other anthologies that people put together? Is that something you've looked into?
Yeah, no, I actually looked at a lot of the after Tales, I looked at a lot of the legends that were in Tales. But no, I mean, I haven't really done the only mythology research that I really done has been for Sinner, because Sinner is kind of mythological it's mythology
that word.
so, and it's kind of like a mix between like fantasy and mythology, and like maybe even a little bit of sci-fi, I guess, kind of.
Okay.
So,
is that something you might go into, sci-fi?
I don't know. I have a lot of ideas that float up here, and I guess one of those 3 short stories that I wrote for Mom for Christmas is actually sci-fi related.
Okay.
So I just kind of create this idea, and see, that's why Isle was so unique, is because like every time I create a new story or I get this new idea, I can write the beginning. I can set everything up. I can introduce everyone to all the characters, get the story rolling, and then I can't figure out what I want the middle to be. Like, I know where it's going to go, but I don't know what to put in the middle, so I end up just dropping it. So, having, Isle and knowing that my goal, was to get to this one scene between Ranger and Isle, there was no setting it up at the beginning. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I wanted was just to reach that point. So it was a slightly different formula, and I think that's why I was a lot more driven to finish it.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so anything else we might like to see from you in the future?
I have a lot of events coming up.
Cool.
So I have another online interview. Her name is Allison, and it is with a bookstore. So it's kind of like a signing, but it's like a book event interview thing.
Cool.
But we're doing it virtual, and that will be on the 27th, Tuesday. Not so the October 27th. It'll be on Tuesday, October 27th. And then I have a couple of in-person events as well. I think I had just seen it go by. I do actually have a sci-fi event coming up, and then I have a book signing next month as well. So I will be taking footage and pictures and everything for everyone to be able to see.
Who are your books aimed at? The Isle of the Dead. Is it like young adult? Is it adult fantasy?
Yeah,
children?
They are very young adult aimed. Yeah, they could be like like teenager or adult even. I mean, I think the majority of people who have read my books have been adults, but I think it is a young adult aim and focus. Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, I've gone over the hour, which I normally try to go for, but that's cool. We've had a good chat. Anything else you want to say to people?
Well, just thank you everybody for coming, and Grayman, thank you so much for letting me blab for an hour and 8 minutes.
All right. That's all good.
So thank you everybody for joining us. I used to be really jittery when I would talk about myself, just because I'm like, why would anybody want to listen about me?
You're used to it now.
But now I'm like, it's actually just kind of fun talking about it, because even as I'm explaining, I realize, oh yeah, this affected something, and yeah, oh, this affected something as well. And so no, it's just a lot of fun. So
Yeah. Cool.
so
Well, you have
thank
to come back when you've got something else to talk about in the future. Another book or something. When another book comes out, we can have another chat. Also,
Right.
I'm doing on my. I don't know if you see, but I'm sort of doing like a couple of new things I've started, like talking to people about their musical memories. Just like
Right.
5 musical memories. Choose 5 CDs, 5 records, 5 gigs, whatever. Just talk about some memory associated with it. So maybe I'll get you on that sometime in the future. And your mum and Kade if he wants to come on.
Absolutely.
Anyway, cheers for coming in. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody. And we will see you all later.